Hey yo, this is Greenskin Mango. Welcome everyone to the Mango Show.
I'm Gordon Meyer, chatting with you from Hong Kong.
And I'm John Witcher, coming to you from the crossroads of America.
Each episode, we'll be discussing creativity in life. We'll be drawing from our 30 years of collaborating together in so many creative endeavors, successes, failures, our influences, and our current inspirations.
So let's get going with the Mango Show. Him and about probably a billion people.
Yeah. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Tim Cook, they're all building spaceships to get off this planet as soon as possible. That's nice to know.
They just can't build them big enough. People are like, yeah. Wow.
So I want to thank everybody for downloading the past 3 podcasts. Had like really great response, and we really appreciate everybody's feedback, and especially for repeat listeners and downloaders. It's fantastic to see how much response we're getting from this. It's fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So I'd like to give a shout out to Hallenor Records, Allison, female-centric comedy, and the link is on our info page, so check it out.
So, John, you're a comedian and you're a doctor, witch doctor. So you would know So you would know best, and is laughter really the best medicine?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, truthfully.
Yeah. I think for a lot of us, laughter is like our sort of self-help program in a lot of ways.
Absolutely, yeah.
We grew up with a lot of great comedians, watching them on TV. I mean, what were some of your favorites, John?
Lucille Ball, Gilda, Mary Tyler Moore, Carol Burnett, just so many. I mean, really defining an era, I think. It was just really, really great how they moved comedy forward.
It's always great getting the reruns of Lucy, followed by, I guess I started watching a little bit of the Mary Tyler Moore show when it was actually still on. I think it went off in like 77 or something. So I remember it kind of being on, but I'm not sure if I was watching reruns or not.
I know I watched reruns of them mostly. The nice thing is they had Lucy at different times during the day, and then like Mary Tyler Moore, and then Carol Burnett was always like around 8 o'clock. And we'd always watch it before we went to bed through the week.
Yeah, I love watching the Carol Burnett show and all those sketches that they that was just an amazing show. That was hilarious. Yeah. It still is. It's still hilarious. Mary Tyler Moore from Dick Van Dyke's show as well. Both of those shows, she played such an amazing character, which I guess she was really just playing herself from what she said, which is really interesting because the characters seem so different, but at the same time, you really feel in a lot of essences that it's really her being this person.
It's one of the things I really liked about like Lucy and Mary Tyler Moore and Carol Burnett. Were funny, but they were also like so real and so human. You could actually feel like you really could experience the things that were on the show.
Yeah. I mean, like Mary Tyler Moore even starts off basically with like a breakup, and she moves to Minneapolis. So that's pretty real. The network, I think, had a few problems with it being a divorce or something like that, because fans would actually think that she'd divorced Dick Van Dyke and moved to Minneapolis. Don't want that to happen.
And paradigms were so much different back then, especially when it came to women in comedy. Oh my gosh.
Oh, for sure. I think Lucy had her work cut out for her. Yeah. I mean, the risk that she took making comedy and her physicality of the comedy that she did. I mean, she goes right back to Chaplin, direct lineage to Chaplin.
Yeah.
And for me, a person that's next in line for that would definitely be Gilda Radner. I mean, she used all of her body and all of her physicality for so much of her comedy. I mean, she basically left herself vulnerable for everyone to see. And that was part of the charm of her comedy and all of her characters that she did. I mean, it was amazing to see some of the characters that she did, like Judy Miller, the hyperactive brownie, or Roseanne Rosanna, just incredible characters.
And how she could just turn it on and off. I mean, just so quickly, just turn it on and off. It just amazed me too. I mean, just to go into character that fast is really, really neat to see.
It's an amazing art to act and to be a comedian. In watching Love Gilda, the documentary about Gilda Radner, I learned a bit about how basically Gene Wilder was the actor and then Gilda was a comedian. And I hadn't really thought of it like that, where Gilda really wasn't in films and acting and things like that. And though Gene Wilder's incredibly funny, he's not really a comedian the way that Gilda was.
What do you call a three-hummed camel? Pregnant!
Gilda Radner is the first member of Saturday Night Live. The
Wow.
original. Not just the first woman, but the very first pick by Lorne Michaels in 1975 to start this first cast of Saturday Night Live. Of course, she's there with like Lorraine Newman and Jane Curtin also in that first season. I thought that was pretty big to have three women on the show from the very start.
For 75, my gosh.
Yeah, for 75, no kidding. So there's always this battle to get your sketch on the show and to get more minutes of airtime. Obviously, that's what you want to do, while at the same time working as a team. And I think the first show that Gilda was on, she was only on for about 2 minutes, and she was a nurse at a hospital delivering a baby bee, basically, to John Belushi.
Wow.
So
I would love to been a fly on the wall in some of those. My gosh.
But I was really impressed at how many women writers were also on the show right at the beginning, too. I hadn't really thought about the male-female numbers of writers. I kind of always assume that it's more male based upon what you always hear from, a lot of women talking about their experiences on Saturday Night Live. Yeah, I was really impressed at the number of women on the show and writing for the show at the time. Pretty great.
Wow. Yeah.
Which I think must lend to it being such a great show, especially at the start.
Some of the risks they took too. Television was a lot different back in 75.
So for this episode, I did a lot of research on Gilda. I mean, I grew up watching her on Saturday Night Live as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old. I was so lucky to be able to stay up late and watch Saturday Night Live. She was one of these people that I just gravitated to. I was spellbound every time I watched her on the screen. I think maybe it had to do with like a lot of her characters. Judy Miller was almost my age. The character she's playing, is like the hyperactive brownie that's dancing around and everything. I think I related to that. I related to a lot of her sort of innocent qualities and her vulnerabilities. I could sense that as a kid, what she was doing and what she was getting at. I thought Bill Murray was just silly. I thought Steve Martin was really silly. They were just funny because they were silly. I didn't really understand a lot of the adult things that they were doing. The physical humor part, I totally got. Those were some of my favorite skits. Lisa Loopner, Todd and Lisa as the nerds, the Noogie Patrol. Gilda started off basically saying that it was a defense mechanism. She used her humor as a defense mechanism when she was in school because she was a little bit chubby. And so basically kids would pick on her, and before they could say something to her, she would be already saying, "Look, I'm fat, I can't see my toes." So she was basically hitting the truth before the other guy had a chance to think about it. I always tried to be funny, and it was part of, I think, being, the youngest in the family and having an older brother and, a lot of teasing and things like that happens when you're a kid. You have to find some sort of defense mechanisms. And I think comedy was one of the things that I gravitated to. And I think maybe it was just because I saw that in Gilda on Saturday Night Live, where I just saw how much people appreciated and loved comedians and laughed. And that was like such an amazing thing to get your family to laugh at what you were doing, to just cut up and make people laugh. I mean, that's a beautiful thing to be able to do that.
Yeah.
One of the quotes that Gilda had was, "When I look back on my life, I always felt that comedy was to make things all right."
Wow.
Some other interesting things that I learned from the film, her biggest motivation has always been love. I'd see a guy that I'd fall in love with, and I just want to be with him wherever he went. I think that's something so many of us who use comedy as our defense mechanisms, that's something that we feel because we just want to be in that moment. and feel that feeling and stick into that world as long as he possibly can. And in doing that, Gilda ends up following this boyfriend to Toronto. And in doing that, she gave up a lot of her theater life that she was involved in when she was in University of Michigan, where she was going to school. She basically just left out a big part of her life that she was just getting into. And
wow,
she has this another beautiful quote. She's full of beautiful quotes. She's such a great writer. While we have the gift of life, it seems to me the only tragedy is to allow part of us to die, whether it's our spirit, our creativity, or our glorious uniqueness.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, so when she's in Toronto, she happens to go to the theater one day because she's not feeling good, not being able to be herself. Herself is the girlfriend. She's finding that missing part of her, of making people laugh, of being on stage, working with people and collaborating. And so she ends up going to a theater there and like getting into local performances. I mean, even going and visiting like the old folks home dressed as a clown or a pantomime or whatever, anything to be involved in the acting and making people feel good. And that's when she gets involved with the Toronto Improv. So she was in Godspell in Toronto with Martin Short. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. And this other guy, Paul Schaefer. I don't know who he is either. I think they're big people now in the entertainment industry. But yeah, really, these are two people that you just start off with. That's your first show that you're ever in, which is just mind-blowing. And it's hilarious to see in Love Gilda, the interview with Martin Short about how he describes Gilda going to try out for Godspell and basically saying, well, I don't really sing very well. She totally got it all on personality. And if you've heard Gilda sing, you understand that's part of the humor you get out of it. Yeah, that's her start. And then Second City came to Toronto, and here you go. John Candy, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Eugene Levy, Betty Thomas, Joe Flaherty, whole lineup of 70s comedy and entertainment going into the next generation. That's
wow.
Yeah. And before that in Second City was Belushi. Obviously he was in that too. And basically Belushi calls Gilda up because he wanted the girl. So they needed a girl in the National Lampoon Radio Hour in New York. And so she jumped into that and went on with Chevy Chase and Belushi and Bill Murray. And that's when it started gaining this underground attention. And Lorne Michaels came up with the whole Live on Saturday Night.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah, that's...
wow.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Margaret Cho. One of the things that I found really troubling is, I didn't know, but when she was cast for the show All-American Girl, they shamed her quite a bit for her size. A lot of female actresses, I think, have gotten that over the years. Well, she started struggling with that and started dieting with diet pills really hardcore. And she lost like 30 pounds in 2 weeks and had her kidneys failed, and they put her in the hospital. And she has struggled with that for a long time.
So is Margaret Cho auditioning for the show, or is she already in the show? You know what I'm saying? Because if they've cast her already, they know who she is.
She was already cast, and they were just wanting her to start losing weight. It had a horrible impact on her life.
It's hard to justify telling somebody that they need to lose weight in any sense, unless it's for your health. But to say hey, we get better ratings if you were skinnier or something like that, when you've cast somebody for who they are, for their humor, for their insight, for that inner glow that they have, why in the world would you?
And I mean, just the person that she is, she's funny and she's just really down to earth, just with her personality and just the actress that she is. That was really not something that would have been necessary at all. It's honestly horrible that you would even tell her to do that, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not like that would ever have happened to Jackie Gleason or...
Really? Yeah. I mean, seriously.
That's, once again, the million double standards that go on in TV and entertainment and comedy, especially because I don't know, for whatever reason, people think that comedy needs to be told to you by a man, but it stems from men having the luxury to do comedy. I think that's really all it is. It's the privilege of men to be able to go up on a stage and spout out whatever they feel about things to get laughs. For so long, women weren't allowed to tell their own truth. They had to be subservient and obey and do whatever men say, which is not comedy on its own, but laughable as a point of view.
Absolutely. I agree.
Gilda had her own battles with bulimia, a lot of it stemming from all the stress from the show. Not only is she on TV, but she's also now being photographed and in the newspaper, and that whole pressure from advertising and everything else that you need to look a certain way. And it's a ridiculous and unrealistic standard for anybody to have to live to, especially when, you're becoming this star. You have so many people that are putting that pressure on you, and you're putting that pressure on yourself, and it's not fair. And it's not fair to anybody, and it's a terrible thing that she had to go through.
Just the pressure, it must have been unreal.
Oh, it's an unreal amount of pressure, right? I mean, to go from doing some stage performances to having 30 million people watch you on Saturday Night Live.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure Margaret Cho has the same sort of relationship with her success. I mean, you're a stand-up comedian that you're grinding it out on stage for years and years and years and really struggling, and then boom, heap of money falls into your lap and you got a show, and here's these number of episodes that you have to produce and star in and be funny in, and you got to look this way because we get better ratings. So is that okay? Sure. You're healthier now, right? And which healthy are we talking about? Are we talking about physical, or are we talking about mental health? Because that's what we talk about, mental health. Gilda has a great quote. Because I wasn't a perfect example of my gender, I decided to be funny about what I didn't have instead of worrying about it.
Wow.
It makes me sad to actually hear that, because I wasn't a perfect example of my gender. I don't even understand what that means or why she would even think that. I mean, even as a child, I was drawn to her as a human being. I just thought she was the most beautiful, funniest ray of sunshine that ever hit the world. I mean, what better example of your gender could you possibly be than her? That was my opinion. Just amazing. Just amazing, the pressure that gets put on people by social, quote, norms that just don't stand up. They just don't live. And luckily, we have Gilda for breaking through a lot of these barriers and saying what she's saying, and for us to repeat what she's saying, because people shouldn't have to live like this. If you're a comedian, if you're a woman comedian, I mean, what's funny? It should be just what you're saying and doing. And yes, physical comedy, appearance is all part of, your act. But to have a social stigma put onto what you're supposed to look like, that just goes out the window. That has nothing to do with it. Success and celebrity doesn't quite go with comedy, because there's something about being an underdog and a voyeur that makes comedy possible.
Oh, I love that. Wow.
How true is that? I mean, we always wonder about, these people on Saturday Night Live, they get so famous that they aren't funny anymore. And I think that nails it on the head of why you have this cast and they change things up, because it's true.
And something that I think is really tough too, especially about appearance now. I was reading the other day where the celebrity was complaining. Now, everywhere you go, everybody has a camera. That's
true. That's absolutely true. You go down to the bodega and get a Snickers bar at 2 a.m. Someone's got a camera taking a picture of you doing it, and it's front page on.
It's true. I mean, seriously, it sounds crazy, but it's true. I mean, anything.
Gilda eats Snickers bar, front page of the New York Post.
In sandals, yeah.
You see Belushi and Dan Aykroyd going off and doing the Blues Brothers. Bill Murray kind of steals a lot of the show when he goes off and does Caddyshack, the first movie that he's been in. All these people are going off and doing these amazing things. What's Gilda going to do? Being the next Lucy or something like that. Why not have your own show? So Gilda goes off and does her one-woman show. She has this song in it that's called I Love to Be Unhappy.
Oh, no.
And that song kind of says it all, because she later on realizes being, quote, Gilda Radner was not what I wanted to be.
Wow.
To be the one person stand up, that just didn't really appeal to her. It was something that she just kind of did once, and once she experienced it, like you're a kid, you grew up, and I want to just do this one person show and make everybody laugh. That's what you do when you're a kid. As an adult, when you're trying to do it, it's a much different experience, because you kind of leave everything out there on the stage, and you come back and you don't have really anything left. So that person that you are is basically locked behind a door until the stage lights come on. Then you're allowed to come out and be that person. It's a really tough way to be funny.
Oh,
right?
yeah. And I've seen so many comedians that say how dark a lot of times their personality is, because, they have to turn this persona on so many different times and be this person. We're doing this movie. I've got to be this person. Now I'm by myself. I'm with myself. How do I exude? How do I even act?
You do something that you think is going to bring happiness and joy to thousands of people, and it does. And yet you're the one that's standing there feeling more alone than you've ever felt before.
Absolutely.
That's nowhere to be. That's a tough situation. And who relates to that? Who do you even talk to that can relate to it? So tell me about Margaret Cho's resolution. So she gets help.
She gets to the point to where she's like, she just doesn't care what people think, which I think is absolutely wonderful. She just got to the point where, okay, that's fine. If I don't fit that criteria, that what I'm supposed to be, I'll just do my own thing. And I really commend her for that. She pretty much just told everybody, piss off. I'm gonna be Margaret Cho. So really good. That's pretty awesome.
That's great. That's what you have to do, right?
Yeah.
Gilda's life after Saturday Night Live, and after doing the one-person show, she meets Gene Wilder. They get married, and basically she's thinking, hey, I'll do some movies with him and sort of ride off into the sunset and have a perfect life, get everything I wanted. But cancer had other ideas, and cancer, she said, taught her the tools that she needed for life, which, coming from Gilda, who basically seemed to get everything that she wanted through laughing, cancer teaching her about life seems to be quite the cruel lesson to learn, right?
Yeah.
She describes it as wanting to write this story of the good girl from Detroit who went to New York City and became a star and made everybody laugh and love her, and getting everything she wanted, a husband, a beautiful life, and then she gets cancer and she beats it. But that's not what happened. So here's a quote. And now I've learned the hard way. It's not about knowing. Having to change, taking the moment and making the best of it without knowing what's going to happen next. That is life. I remember watching the May 20th Saturday Night Live episode, 1989, Steve Martin hosting it, and it's the day that Gilda died. The Dancing in the Dark sketch that he and Gilda did in 1978, which was always one of my favorites. I think I actually watched that when it came out, because that skit was when the Blues Brothers were on the show. So it's Steve Martin and the Blues Brothers. Who did not watch that show back in 1978? That was like a historic show. So this skit of basically Steve Martin sitting at the bar and turning around, and just as Gilda's at another table and she sees him, and they have this imaginary dance that goes across the tables and through the floor, and neither one of them being professional dancers, but making it up as they go along is just hilarious. And that, showing that, you know, on that monologue for the day that she passed away was just so bittersweet. And it really does remind you of the brilliance of Gilda and how well she was able to make people laugh at the most ordinary things. Beautiful. So when I moved to New York, I worked in Tribeca, and I remember going to a screen printer that was close to Tribeca. It was over near Varick. And I remember walking to this place from Tribeca and going down this street and seeing this big red door and this sign that said Gilda's Club and has the funny caricature of Gilda Radner, like basically it's her Rosanna Dana character. Is this like a comedy club or what is this? So Gilda's Club was founded by Gene Wilder and some of Gilda's friends after she passed away, and it opened its signature red door in New York City in 1995. And that's what this is. So it's for cancer patients. Red door, yeah. It's for their families. It's for everybody that's affected by cancer to come and talk and get some help from each other. Based upon Gilda's experience, she had done the same thing when she was in California and had cancer, and initially did not want to go to a group to talk about this or anything, but when she did, she found it was one of the best things ever that happened in her life. I'll be putting the website for Gilda's Club on our notes here. It's a great organization. They actually named the street between Varick and 6th Avenue that Gilda's Club is on Gilda Radner Way, which I remember that very specifically because it happened when I was living in New York, and I thought it was fantastic. To me, it was one of these things that it's just makes you terribly, terribly sad in some deep, heartfelt ways, because it was like, you know, she was such a part of our youth and such a part of like, and how you laughed and saw the world. And to commemorate her that like that, to be able to say, oh, I'm going to walk down Gilda Radner Way. That's just, I love that. I love that vision in my head of actually doing that. That's one of the, that's a New York landmark that everyone should visit.
Why didn't the skeleton try out for the play? He didn't have the guts.
Yeah. So that's my daughter, Sophie, and she is an amazing comedian. Ever since she was a baby, she's had impeccable timing. She's watched some Gilda skits. She watched Judy Miller hopping around on her bed as like the brownie and yelling in her room, and she loved it. So to see Gilda being watched and laughed at from my daughter, just, oh, that's just the best. I mean, that's like sharing such a great part of your world and your life. Wow, she loves Gilda Radner too.
Become a subscriber to The Gamango Show Creative for Life and visit the podcast site for more links and info. You can also visit the website of greenskinmango.com for our awesome streetwear, eclectic music, and comedy. Go be creative, be creative, be creative, be creative, be creative.